So Jennie Lee, I think it's important to recognise Jennie Lee's contribution in modern politics, and as a woman coming from this area, all that she achieved. She was brought up in Lochgelly in Cowdenbeath, and she was first elected in 1924. She was elected in 1929, she was elected in a by-election for North Lanark. And at the time she was 24, she wasn't actually old enough to vote in that election. And so she was the baby of the house when she went to Westminster. She grew up in Fife. I had quite an interesting, the biography which I'd recommend to people if they're interested, it's quite good. And I looked at it this morning, I quite liked. I'll read this out to you. It said, "The culture of the Commons was of course exaggeratedly masculine, rowdy, boozy, assertive and quarrelsome. For ILP women like Jennie, who had been handling rowdy, boozy, assertive and quarrelsome men at public meetings since her student days, who had seen off hardened communist activists, who gave and took no quarter with more skill than most ILP men, the House presented not the faintest threat." I thought was quite funny. Many of the speeches she thought were not up to much. She was young, fearless, fluent, impassioned, in awe of nothing, and certainly not of her fellow MPs. So if you think she was a woman who came from this area, she grew up and went to local schools here, and at the age of 24 she went into the House of Commons, which at the time was not a place for women and not really a place for young people either. We see quite a changed parliament these days, which I think is very positive. So she was a very courageous woman and very passionate and forceful woman to do that. So she was re-elected in the post-war Labour landslide, and it was in Harold Wilson's government in the 1960s that she became involved in the arts portfolio. And first of all, he asked her to produce a white paper. And it's interesting when you think about the 1960s government. That government was a very progressive, modern, it looked like a younger government. It was trying to match how Britain was changing as a society. And Jennie's art policy really tried to respond to what was happening in modern times. And she had three priorities in that paper. One was about pushing money from the centre. At the time, arts policy was very London-based. It was quite establishment, it supported the big companies. She tried to push money out into the regions, and it turned out at the end of her career that Wales was the second highest area after London, and Scotland was the third highest area in terms of the amount of money she managed to push out into regional development. And you know, there are great things happening in Scotland. You look at our Edinburgh festivals, our Fringe programme, the festivals that are coming up in smaller areas across. We've had the Film Festival in Kirkcaldy. There's lots of things happening, but we shouldn't be complacent. There are things we should address in arts policy. And in Scotland, if you're poor, or if you have a disability, or if you're older, you're less involved in the arts. You don't either go to performances, you don't perform yourself, you don't have the kind of engagement that you do have if you come from a better off area and you have better income. So we really need to all challenge that and think, how do we address that situation? We also have an issue with access to the arts, and some of you might have seen that James McAvoy, who's one of our Scottish actors, he's been in the papers again recently saying in the United Kingdom, if you know, the artistic, to go into cultural, if you're really an actor and you want to get into productions, often you're having to fund yourself. It's difficult to make a breakthrough. It's difficult to get into the art college or the conservatoires if you're coming from a poorer background. And it's interesting that James McAvoy says actually you need more in schools and you need more investment in communities if you're going to have the broadest access possible to the arts, to make sure, while our arts might be high quality, make sure it's available to everyone and everyone can take part in performing and be involved in that. So he's made quite interesting comments about access to the arts. Who actually is who is the UK's main actors? Who is the profile? Who's having a successful career? Often at the moment, they tend to come from quite privileged backgrounds. How do we make sure everyone has those opportunities? So that leads me quite nicely on to Kevin Sayers. Kevin's over here. Because when I sent out the invitations, I didn't know so much was actually being planned in Fife to recognise Jennie Lee's legacy over the next wee while. I know Kevin's going to say about it, but there's quite a lot coming together in terms of promoting Jennie Lee and her involvement in the arts and Open University.
Inspiration for this was about a local figure that we could celebrate, a local figure that did a hell of a lot coming from a background of not very much, and why can't everybody else do that? And of course they can if they want, and I'm speaking particularly to young folk here today, but equally to the parents and grandparents that are here today. It's about encouraging especially young people in all their dreams and trying to capture them. But what Jennie Lee said when the white paper was published in February 1966, she said there can be no question of offering to students a makeshift project in theory and quality to other universities. In other words, Open University had to be as good as Oxford, Cambridge or anywhere else for that matter. Its aim will be to provide, in addition to radio and television lectures, correspondence courses of a quality unsurpassed anywhere in the world. This will be reinforced by residential courses and tutorials. She said it will mean genuine equality of opportunity for millions of people for the first time, people who didn't traditionally have the opportunity to learn and to develop, getting that. I think we could all sign up to that. What the next 5-6 years offers is an opportunity to mark staging posts on the way to the foundation and the opening of the Open University. Its first pupils enrolled and started in January 1971. So in 2021, that will be 50 years, and that, if you like, is the end point for us. We'd quite like to create 50 Jennie Lees for the 50th anniversary, and the idea behind that is to help young people, and young girls in particular, who perhaps wouldn't have the opportunity of further or higher education to get into that, doing Open University courses through school and through college, and that being paid for. So that's a small start to what we want to do. We have 2 brands which you'll begin to see coming out. The first one is Be Jennie Lee, and that's the thought that you can be what you can be. You can come from Minestock in the Logelly area and you become Minister for the Arts, the first British Minister for the Arts there ever was, and you can deliver on something like Open University, or you can achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. So Be Jennie Lee is the big brand, and underneath that we'll also be doing the University of the Air, and that's about all this digital stuff and all. And Janet Robertson, my colleague here from Youth Arts, is a specialist on that stuff. The first proper event will be on February 20th in the Logelly Centre. The schools are in with us now. You mentioned Beath, Benarty and Logelly are here today, but all the schools in the Beath High and Logelly High clusters will be taking part and putting an exhibition on at the Logelly Centre on 20th of February. But that's the start. Low-key this year, and we'll be working up through the years to 2021 when there'll be some form of big bang. I don't know what that'll be yet, but it'll be good. Thank you for listening, and thank you for celebrating Jennie Lee.